The election is on the 22nd of June, so really not very long now until it takes place. What people have been saying to me is that they're really confused in that the system has changed, and there are certain things that they're very unsure about. But hopefully this short video will help people understand more about the process. You can vote if you've been living in Jersey for at least the last 2 years. If you're not on the electoral register, many people think it's now too late, but in fact there's still a supplemental register that's open until the 15th of June. There are 3 ways that you can vote at this election. You can vote on the day, of course, by going along to your allocated polling station. So that's on the 22nd of June. Or in Jersey, we do have a system of what's called pre-voting, whereby between the 13th and the 17th of June, you can go along to St Paul's Centre and you can pre-vote there. You will need to take some ID with you. One of the big changes in this election has been to give everyone the opportunity to vote by post, although the registration for that date has now passed. If you are too vulnerable or too ill to actually go out to vote, there is something called home voting, whereby if you contact your parish hall where you live, they will arrange for someone from the judicial graph to come out and actually help you with the voting process, but from your home. We no longer have any island-wide voting, so that means that you can no longer vote for senators because the position of senators has been abolished. What we have instead are deputies, whose numbers have increased from 29 to 37, and constables who remain the same, 1 constable for each of the parishes. So what we now have are 9 districts. Now these are either standalone parishes, so St Brelard, St Clement, St Saviour, for example. St Helier is now 3 districts, but some parishes, some of the smaller parishes, have been combined, either 2 parishes or 3 parishes. The whole idea is, and this is one of the big changes, that each district will have a similar number of people who are eligible to vote. In most cases, it's fairly obvious. So if you live in St Brelard, St Clement, then obviously that's where you vote. Where it is particularly confusing is if you live in St Helier, because there are these 3 districts, and it's not necessarily obvious which district your street might be in. You can find out by either looking at a website called vote.je, or both the BBC and ITV have got some good interactive guidance, which of course you enter your postcode and it will be able to tell you where you need to go and vote. How many votes you have will depend which district you're in. In most cases, you will either have 4 votes, some cases you will have 5 votes. It's important to remember that you don't have to use them all. So if there's only 1 candidate that you want to vote for, that's fine, but you can vote up to, whether it's 3, 4 or 5, depending on your district. Well, none of the above is a new concept, and the idea is that it tries to avoid the situation which we've had in the past in Jersey, where you get no choice of candidates because there's only 1 candidate for the seat. In this election, none of the above will apply to certain parishes where only 1 person has put their name forward for constable. So if you don't want to vote for that person, you can vote none of the above. And of course, if none of the above were to win the election, then of course there would have to be another election, and hopefully more candidates would put their name forward. For the first time in Jersey, we have party politics in its real sense. In the past, of course, we've had the Reform Party, but we now have some new parties. We have, of course, Reform, Jersey Alliance, the Progress Party, Jersey Liberal Conservatives, and then there is a grouping of independents called A Better Way, which aren't a party but are a loose grouping. And then, of course, the vast majority of candidates are still standing as independents. Now, of course, what this means is that we already have a situation where two of the parties, Progress and Jersey Liberal Conservatives, have said they will form a coalition. And what will happen is that because no one party has enough candidates to have a majority, they are going to have to talk either to other parties or, of course, to independents to be able to form the next government. So, yes, we do now have political parties, but it is all really still quite confusing for everyone. In Jersey, we still have a first-past-the-post system. So that means that if in your district you have 4 votes, you don't have to use all 4 votes, but if you do choose to use all 4 votes, then you would just put 4 X's, or if you only use 1 vote, then 1 X. And in our system, that means that the top 4 people in that district would then be the people who get elected. A proportional system is very different, and that's where you vote by preferences. So again, using that example, 4 candidates, you want to use 4 votes, you would put 1, 2, 3, 4, and if your number 1 candidate was at the bottom of the poll, they would be eliminated and your vote would go to your number 2 person. Many people feel that's a much more democratic system, but of course what we have in Jersey is still the old first-past-the-post system. After the 22nd of June, so when we all wake up on the 23rd of June, we will know who all the elected people are for the states. We, however, don't get any right to choose who the Chief Minister will be, because deals will be done, often behind the scenes, between those who we've elected to choose who will be the next Chief Minister. And of course, we already know that there are at least 4 politicians who want to be the next Chief Minister. What then happens is that the Chief Minister, depending on who he or she is, will decide who they'd like their ministers to be. But it's important to remember that just because they want a particular person as a minister, again, it's not us who chooses, but it's the states who will then have an election for each of those ministers. And that's how the next government will be formed. What I think many people forget is that the decisions of our politicians affect all of us every single day. They make decisions which do potentially affect every one of us. We can't complain if we don't vote. It's really, really important that people do go out to vote. You can vote in Jersey from 16, and it's a real privilege as a 16-year-old to be able to vote, and it's really important that young people do have a say in what goes on in the island. So what I would say is nothing will change, nothing potentially will get any better unless you feel that you've had your democratic voice in these elections.